I'm Kim Beam, and this is Social Work Your Life, and we're rejoining Stacy as she talks about recovery and what it means, and what it means to, for those of you who are listening in listening land, Stacy just threw a peace sign. What it means to go inpatient treatment for recovery and what that looks like and what brings you there. So that was part one, what brings you there. And two is what does there look like? So what does inpatient treatment look like? So your husband drives you, right? To pick up where we left off. Your husband drove you. And what does it look like? What is this thing that is inpatient?
Yeah. So an important thing to note is that I went in December of 21. So we're still in the height of at least at the hospital institution level, COVID, right? So I just want to make sure that that's really clear because this is no longer the case. My experience will not be replicated for a while unless we have another variant that completely kicks everybody's, patooties. So, so what it meant was my husband literally left me at the front door, does not get to walk me in, does not get to even see what it's like on the inside, doesn't get to see any of the people who take me, nothing, literal sign on the door, patients only. I have to, I had to be COVID negative before I could even walk in the door. They come out and they swab me in my car, call me and say, okay, now you can come in. So
wait, what would have happened if you had tested positive?
Send me home.
Now, again, for somebody who's
yes, oh, yes,
right, if I were an addict and I desperately needed help, and I show up and you COVID swab me and say, I'm sorry, come back in 10 days, you are never going to see me again.
Yes, I believe that there were plenty of those kinds of stories.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, no. And now also remember, some of these people drive from Chicago. Some of them are flying from New York, California, Oregon, Louisiana. You know what I mean? So I have now flown and now I'm tested and now so it's one thing if you're an hour away, Minneapolis up to Center City and come back in 10 days, go home and quarantine in 10 days. Maybe you'll do it, right? Maybe you have a family member who's no, yes, she's coming back. We'll be back, give her a spot, that kind of thing. But now what do you do with the person who's flown here? Because they can't get back on an airplane.
Mm-mm.
So now when you're talking about the cost of treatment being inhibitive, maybe you can find an $80 a night hotel room.
But for somebody who's an addict, they don't necessarily have money like that unless they have family who's willing to put them up for $80 a night. If you can find an $80 a night place and
right, all of that. Anyway, so so COVID positive or COVID negative, they let me in. And for good reason, right? We're all living together.
Yeah.
Right. And so you don't want, and there were plenty of outbreaks that happened out,
Were you all masked the entire time you were in there, or did you take the masks off in there? Because in medical centers, you couldn't take masks. We still can't take masks off.
Yeah. So the rules were that you had to have on your mask. That was true when staff was around. You know what I mean? Let's just say that anytime there was an enforceable agent around, masks were on. And honestly, I'll be really I don't know. I thought this was actually kind of cool because you kind of learn from the people who have been there, somebody who's been there 24 hours longer than you is an expert, right? So you learn from those people and it's oh, when the counselor comes in to do group, we do put on our masks out of respect for this person to not have to harp on us. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. But anyway, that's all COVID land and who knows, whatever. Anyway, so the way I describe treatment is probably a little softer than someone who would come in, blowing a 0.2 or blowing a 0.3, because that's going to be super hazy, right? They're not going to remember doing the financial. They're not going to remember doing the admission. They're not going to remember who they gave permission to, being able to know who you were there or whatever. I'm clear as a bell. I'm terrified, but I'm clear as a bell, right?
So I want to pause there and ask what you're doing with that terror, because you've been masking your emotions with alcohol for the past year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
So what did you do with that terror as you're having it?
Most of it turned into anger
Mhm.
at having to be there and, you know, lots of like negative self-talk. But then there was also this sense that like once I walked in, it was like, I've done this. Like, okay, now I'm here. They've taken, you know, last call, COVID negative, here you go, right? Like this is it. And so, you know, I was super hopeful that I was just going to get right on a unit and just get in and do whatever it was that I was going to do, right? And instead, because of my blood pressure, they kept me on the medical unit one night, which was awesome that happened, because I would have missed out on that part of like the sequential story. If I had missed that, I wouldn't have had any idea what that's like. Instead, I have a really good idea and I remember it. Not everyone else is kind of like, whoa, you know, not everyone else. Many people are like, and it was my first night that I actually realized like I am here to get help. That is what I'm here to do.
Mhm.
And I now am about to invest thousands of dollars, lots and lots of time, and I need to do this. And so that night, the person I was sharing a bathroom with, so I had my own room because I was sober, but I was sharing a bathroom with somebody, and there was definitely something contrabandish happening in the bathroom, smell wise. And I was like, I don't know what to do about this. And like every time I'd go in the bathroom, it was like very clear. And I'm like, I can't get kicked out of here because they think it's me, you
Mhm.
know? And they search all of our stuff, but they don't search our person. And so there's ways to get stuff in there. Like I'm not trying to give away secrets, but like you can get, but why would you, whatever. Anyway, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like I'm going to sneak in this thing so that anyway, because I was sort of like, I'm getting help now. So at like 3 o'clock in the morning, this nurse comes in, you know, they just check, you know, whatever. And like, why are you up? And I'm like, I'm about to practice with you. I think that I need to practice this thing with you where I do something super scary for myself and you teach me how I'm supposed to do this. Like I literally say all these words, right? Like I need you to help me help myself right now. And I'm like, can you just go in the bathroom and tell me if I'm crazy? And she was like, just go in the bathroom, come back and tell me if I'm crazy. And she comes back, she's like, pack up your stuff. Like, you don't need to be next to this for the rest of the night. And then they lose me. She like puts me in this back corner room and apparently didn't like hand off the information at like changeover time. And so my first like 12 hours in this place are not real awesome, you know, like I get moved to room 9:30. I'm like, surely by now I should get breakfast. Like it smells like everybody else got breakfast, but I didn't. So I like walk out and they're like, oh my gosh, we've been looking for you. And I'm like, I'm right here. Like I'm right here. And there's like a band to make sure I don't walk off the unit, you know? So like, wouldn't the alarm have gone off? Like, don't you trust your own technology? Anyway, um,
You cut
and
it
then
off. You cut off the band.
right, yeah, like that doesn't cause an alarm. Come on, people. Yeah, and like I had scissors. I mean, they don't let you bring scissors. They don't let you bring nail polish remover. There's none of, you know, there's like a big long list of things you can't bring. So,
Wait
yeah,
a minute.
and
I'm just
then
gonna interrupt for 2 seconds, and I'm gonna
yeah,
say, in real life, if we can cut this if you need to, but in real life, Stacy is a Color Street representative. Like
yeah.
she has a Color Street like company, so she sells nail polish. Like it's her thing. So to not have nail polish remover, how did you survive for 4 weeks or 5 weeks without doing your nails?
Well, so I was only in full inpatient for the first 10 days. And
Okay.
then my insurance said that I was medically stable enough to get moved to the day treatment unit. And at the time, thankfully, because of the COVID restrictions, the day treatment unit looked like inpatient light. Normally you get to leave and like go out to go to meetings, you can go shopping, you can go out to dinner, whatever, like during non-program time.
Right.
But because of COVID restrictions, we weren't allowed in and out. Thank goodness, because I wasn't ready for that amount of freedom. But what it did give us was that there are like techs who like a technical assistant, a addiction tech who has like supplies. And one of those supplies is nail polish remover that you can check out under supervision. So I was good to go. Yeah.
Okay.
I was good to go. Like,
That's a really interesting
yeah,
point, and we'll get back to that when we get back to you being in day treatment. Okay, so
yeah,
now you're on the unit, you get out there and you're like, hi, I'm here. And they're like, oh, there you are.
right, yeah, yeah. So this is the medical unit. This is like stabilization, you know, whatever. And they're like, okay, you could stay here another 24 hours. The bed you want on the unit you want is not available. So we could keep you here for another night, or you could go on to another unit. And then when that bed on the other unit opens up, we'll move you. Right. That sounded really crazy to me. But when the social worker came in, she was like, you don't, like, you walked in here sober. There's no reason for you to, like, this medical space is really expensive. Like, you're racking up dollars here. And I'm like, okay, fine. So they moved me over to a unit that had space. The unit they wanted to put me on there at Hazelden, they have kind of a professional-ish unit. So like anybody with a license of some kind, social work, nurse, doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist. And because I did in-home mental health work and had school counselor and teacher license, I qualified for that unit. And so, but there was no space on that unit. So I get over into this other unit and I'm like, I'm not here very long, is what I'm thinking, right? Because I don't know. And I meet with the counselor and I'm like, how does this really work? Like, do you really know if I'm moving tomorrow? And she's like, honestly, Stacy, I have no idea. Like, maybe not. I'm like, listen, you get 2 nights because I know how this works. I've watched 28 Days. Actually, I hadn't by then, but I've seen it now, but several times. I do recommend 28 Days. If you want an accurate depiction of what inpatient looks like, 28 Days does a really great job of an addiction facility, and doesn't water it down.
Sandra Bullock and
Yeah.
Rufus Sewell. Is that her boyfriend in there, Rufus Sewell?
I don't know. He's just cute. That's all I know.
I'm pretty sure it's Rufus Sewell because, you know, he
Yeah.
might be on the laminated list. And who's in the guy who plays Wash in Firefly, he's in there. He plays a German guy.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of characters, I want to use the word characters, on the unit with her who like make things very interesting while she's there.
Yes, absolutely. I highly recommend the movie. I mean, you could even show it. I would recommend it down to like age 14. A smart 14. Anyway, I don't know. I'm out of touch with 14-year-olds. Anyway, so I knew 14. How this.
I'm not completely out of touch with 14-year-olds. I think 14. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that like you do fast bonding, like people you're rooming with, you know, the people that because you're in group or whatever. And I'm like, you get 2 days. So the next morning, the techs come and pull me out of like 8 o'clock, and they're like, you got to move right now. Like your spot's available and you got to go. And I'm like, no, wait. Like I haven't warned anybody that I'm leaving. I don't want anybody to be mad at me. And one of the techs like kind of reaches across and is like, this is your recovery. And I'm like, oh, yeah, my recovery. You're right. This is okay. Yep. I'm like, I don't know. I still don't know what to do. And she's like, let's get you packed up and moved over. She's like, they start group in about 10 minutes. And I'm like, okay, let's just go. You know, like, okay, you know, because again, like my bad thinking got me in there.
Mm-hmm.
And now these people who I just keep going, this person knows. You know, the nurse the night before, the tech that morning, and I just started building up this, like, these people are, you know, the professionals here know what they're doing. And I'd had some interaction with people who've been successful at Hazelden. And so I kind of knew, you know, that I was going to a good place kind of thing. You know, I think that's the scariest thing is like, do you know if you're going to a good place or not? And you know, I knew people who had come out afterwards better and, you know, that kind of thing. And just listen to everything they say, Stacy. Okay, I'll just do it. You know, and then I get assigned a male counselor over on my new unit. And I'm like, this is not going to work. Like, I literally sit down as I'm saying that, like, this is not going to work. Like,
and you said that to your male therapist? This is
out loud. Yeah, this is not going to work. Please move me to the female therapist. And he was like, give me an hour. After an hour, we'll talk. I'm like, okay, you get an hour. Go. And, you know, and at the end, he was like, so what do you think? And I'm like, we'll take this one day at a time. I've heard that's a good catchphrase. You know?
So you stuck with him.
stuck with him. Yeah. And when I went back, I just spoke at Hazelden a week and a half ago, and he was there. He came back after work, had already put in a full day, and came back for the 7 o'clock speaker night.
Because it was
So, yeah, I had written to him. You know, the success rate isn't awesome. I wouldn't, you know, I mean, this is I think part of the reason that the people who go into being addiction counselors are former addicts themselves for the most part. Like, it's a high number of people. Yeah. I mean, a ton. I want to say like 90% of the people I came into contact with in treatment were former, you know, are still in recovery. And I think that the reason they are the ones who gravitate there is because they know that the success rate is low and you can't screw us up anymore than we already are. You know what I mean? And it's like, here it is. I actually have a friend who says that about her job. So just on the off chance she hears this, I will give her credit just by mentioning that that's not my original phrase. But I think that that's really true, is that like they know who they were as addicts. I know who like if I would go into that profession, I'd be like, I know who I was. Like, I'm not going to listen to you, you know?
Yep.
My counselor did a lecture while I was there, and he talks about how, you know, he basically was in treatment from, you know, for over the course of like 7 to 9 years. And he said it wasn't that the message changed at all from the first time he went in to the end time. It was that he finally listened and got desperate and realized, like, I'm powerless. So anyway, blah. Yeah, so I get on there. They decide I'm too medically stable after, you know, a solid 8 days. And I will say,
before we go into like they decide that you're ready to go.
Yeah.
You have group in the morning. You have individual therapy daily.
Not daily. So there's 2 groups when you're inpatient. Yep. So about yep, like 3 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. They have like 12-step meetings that you can, you know, participate in that are peer led.
That are for your particular brand of what you need in a 12-step program.
Nope, generic on the unit. Generic on the unit when you're inpatient. So like it'll be a different kind depending on kind of, they always have like peer leaders, at least at Hazelden they do this way, where there's peer leaders and those people decide like what kind of meeting we're having this day, you know. We get handed, you know, you get handed your brand of book when you walk in. But like on my unit, there were really strict rules. Like we had a 6:30 meditation, 6:30 a.m. meditation.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like what, you know,
you had to be there.
Yeah, like you have to be there, and yeah, and then like have to write on the board like where you're going all day. Like, do you have? Because I did see a psychologist and psychiatrist, and I had DBT groups there, and you know, if I have anything on my schedule, I have to write that on the board so that the person knows like this is why Stacy's not at this spot at this time, you know. And there's no downtime, and then there's three required lectures a day. That at the time where we were sitting in like our unit living room, now you're trekking back and forth to a lecture hall 3 times a day to see these different lectures. Yeah,
that was
so much information.
The lectures were when you were in the lighter unit or when you were on the inpatient unit?
They're both.
Okay.
They're available. So they're for they're for everyone who's there, everyone who's living on site. Yeah. And then the 7 o'clock one is always like someone who's left has a year or more sobriety and is a graduate along with whatever.
A living representative of what living looks like.
Yeah.
And that's what you just did a couple Sunday nights ago, was that evening meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you are in group in the morning for 3 hours, in the afternoon for 2 hours, what is the content of that group? Like, what are you talking about in there?
Oh man, everything. I mean, the counselors bring different things. So you have to fill out assessments every single day. And so they're bringing in they're looking through I don't know, 8 to 10 of us, you know, what's happening and basically trying to find a theme to present okay, then there's this. And then there are other things that seem to be curricularly laid out. And, you know, on Tuesdays we had spiritual growth or whatever. And Thursdays we had mental health, and Wednesdays we had, what's that called? Wellness. Like, what is that when you're like doing, because we would do like Tai Chi or, different things. Anyway.
Yeah.
But the process group type stuff, like, that's crazy town.
And
it's like,
and that's individual based on what process you're in at that moment.
yes, but 8 of us all at once. So like I garbage out, and then other people go, what I hear, how I related was, and like they're getting their therapy through
yes
another peer. And I will say at some points I was just like, this is crap. Like, they're basically saying that like her therapy is my therapy. Like, they're double charging here, but I mean, I stayed in outpatient through August and continued to go to these process group things in an outpatient way. And I buy into them now. Like, the group is, when you stop wanting to be there, it's time to, it's like, then it's time. Like, not when you first go in, but like at some point you're just like, this isn't life anymore. Like, we don't live in process groups. So it's time to be done. Like, now I'll go out and do this other thing.
But isn't a meeting out in the community sort of a process group?
It is. Yeah. I mean, it has similarities. It's different in the sense that, like, in treatment, it's directed by someone who's trained to like do that, right? And really kind of like get us toward a thing. I'll be honest, like 12-step meetings, they're miraculous that they work, because it's just a whole bunch of people who are, troubled getting together to help each other.
Yes.
And there's some structure, like, thankfully there's some structure. The good ones have structure, but for the most part, there's not any like, Kim, you shared this and now I'm going to talk about what you just shared. It's like, this is our topic, talk for 3 minutes, and then hopefully you hear something that works for you, but you don't get to interact with it,
Yeah.
And that's different. Like, there's not, in meetings, there's not this dialogue thing. That's the after meeting. That's the coffee shop. That's the,
right. There's no cross talk.
No. Which in process groups, it's not supposed to be like advice giving and that kind of thing, but it's much more related to each other.
Right.
Whereas in meetings, that's not, and I go to good meetings, so they tend not to be. Well, I mean, they're not supposed to be cross-talky. Like, doesn't matter if someone has 25 years or 25 days. We're all on the same playing field out in those meeting worlds. Whereas that's not true in the treatment. In the treatment world, I don't think that that's true. Somebody with much more time and experience, counselor, tech, whatever. Anyway.
That makes sense. More of a hierarchy there.
Yeah. So there were some, everything that happened to me in treatment, there were some times that were super rocky. They moved me sooner than I wanted to be out of the full inpatient to the day treatment unit, far earlier. And I mean, I feel badly kind of, because I was like,
Was that based on insurance?
Insurance is who dictated that. Yes.
Yep.
Because so, that whole idea that we have of 28 days, that was the standard of treatment. The standard of treatment pre-Obama. Do you actually want to hear about this? Because I learned this because I was such a pain in the butt. So,
yes, please. I mean, you
can cut whatever.
Yeah. Some of those might need to be cut. I mean, for those of you who are watching in video land, you're going to get the whole story. But the people who are listening in people, because we cut the audio to be appropriate for podcast length, right? But the video land people get the whole. They're not going to get the break time, but they will get the full story. But you put your
want it.
What was all that? Because that was up here and I didn't hear any.
I said only if you want it.
So tell me about how Obama messed with things.
Yeah, so it's like every time somebody has good intentions, they don't think about the side effects, right? And I want to be really, really clear. I want to be super, super clear that the good intentions in this instance probably far outweigh these negative things. Okay. So I want to be really clear up front that things are better,
decidedly
better.
Much more
Yeah.
people have the access to medical insurance
Access.
that didn't have
Exactly.
access to medical insurance before, right?
Right.
And though it might cost a little bit, still cost prohibitive at times, right? You
Yeah.
still have access to it in a way you didn't have access to it before. So
Or,
like,
correct.
right?
Yes.
I'm all for
Yes.
that.
I
However,
just want to be really clear because like I am like a political wasteland and I like I'm angry at all of them. I don't like any of, whatever. I want to be really clear that like I am not anti-Obamacare. I'm just
no.
didn't think about the ramifications. So part of what Obamacare did was that it required all treatment facilities to provide, sorry, back up. It required all insurances to cover treatment. What it did not do was dictate the length of stays and how that's all decided. And so every insurance company has the ability to determine what your coverage level is and how it's decided. So what happened was pre-Obamacare, if you went to Hazelden, you were signed up for the 28 days, then you signed up for 90 days of day treatment, and then you did 6 months of aftercare. And that gave you 9 months of solid sobriety, and people stayed sober at a higher rate because they did these chunks. Yes, they were away from their families, and yes, but not everybody could do that. Like, not everybody got to do it because not all insurances covered Hazelden. And not everybody has, Eric Clapton wealth to be able to.
Or Drew Barrymore, who got to live for a year and a half in a facility.
Yes, right. Which again, like these people, all of us need help, but not all of us have that ability, right? So anyway, so then now they could literally just cover you. Sorry, Herbie needs to get moved. Go for it, buddy. You want to go downstairs? I'm sorry, Kim.
No, it's okay.
We have multiple things going on here. My husband was in a meeting and I asked him to take it downstairs because we both have loud voices and I didn't want like Mission Carey in the background.
What did you say? Christian Carey? Is that what you said?
Mission. Because he's the director of missions for our denomination.
Just to interrupt, when I said earlier how that played out being her husband's wife, right? Carrie is a pastor. Like that's what he does for his job. So to be a pastor's wife, to say, hey, I have this like secret thing going on, there's whole layer of.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole different podcast.
I will say this much though, that I have never regretted letting that community know what's going on inside of me now. That if there are judges out there and if that's there, they're not bold enough to come my way verbally or whatever. And most of what I have is intense support and gratitude for like giving this window into what I've gone through, because if statistics are right, 10% of the population is addicts, which means that like we're running around bumping into addicts all the time. They're in our families, they're in our churches, they're wherever. So they're in our yoga studios.
They're in my meditation classes.
They're in your meditation class. But yeah, so anyway, okay, back to insurance. So what happened was the insurance that I had at the time determined that I had reached a medically stable space after being, on the medical unit one night, one inpatient unit one night, and then 7 or 8 nights on the actual unit, my home unit.
The professional
right.
that you were on.
Yeah. And I lost my shit all over that campus. Like when that was explained to me that this is what was happening, like I literally was like Tasmanian devil around the entire campus. And fun story, there's a bust of Betty Ford because Betty Ford donated quite a bit of money and to start Betty Ford, and then now Hazelden and the Betty Ford Foundation have combined. So reaching lots, like the New York facility is now with Hazelden. Anyway, so there's a bust of Betty Ford as you're going into the women's side of the campus. And every time I would pass that, I would bless her. I'd thank you, Betty, for your work on behalf of women. All of this. Every single time I passed it up until this day when I get this message. And I like Tasmanian devil past that bust into someone's office where they are like trying to get me to see reason, and actually were trying to help me financially, because when you move to day treatment, insurance continues to cover your 5 hours of treatment every day, but does not cover your cost of living, the housing part. And so that becomes,
which could probably be like what, 150, 200 a day, 300 a day,
4,000 a month.
Oh, wait a minute. I kind of want to do some math on that.
I think they only charge you for 5 nights and let you stay for the weekends free. That's kind of how they do it. So it's like 200 a day, I think.
200 a day.
But they only charge you for 5. You get charged for 5 sleep nights, but you sleep 7. I don't know. Oh. They're miracle people over there. It's a lot, like, right? So like, I hear that.
My statement all the time is that insurance companies are not out to help sick people. Insurance companies are out to make money.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I see it all the time because I work in a hospital. Like, insurance companies are not out to help sick people, or are not out to like help people get better or support people in the support that they actually need. They are out to make money. That's what they are.
100%.
We are in a capitalistic nation, and there are people in our government and our world who vote in the United States who think that that's totally fine because this is all capitalistic. But on another level, if you are an insurance company where you are supposed to be paying for people to get the treatment they need so that they can be healthy, productive members of society, they need the insurance company to come through.
Right. And I would say that the goal of the insurance company, besides making money, is to just get you medically stable enough to get you out of wherever you are. I think that that's what they try to do. So anyway, so because of that, the foundation has financial support, has, scholarships and that sort of thing. So this woman is trying to tell me that they're going to help me. And I'm like, I'm not having it. And she's like, I don't deal with patients. Like, I don't do counseling. That's what I needed a therapeutic intervention. Right. And so she's like tapping me on my forearms here. She's like, I need you to go upstairs and talk with a counselor. She's just like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. She's like, I will see you when you're calmer. I don't do this. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And I'm still upset, right? Like, I'm upset, but I'm reasonable enough, right? So I bolt out of her office and I take like 3 steps right past the bust of Betty. And I'm like, oh, you didn't bless Betty. So I turn around and I grab the bus. Like, this is in the hallway, Kim. This is in the hallway. This is not like some corner where nobody's there. Like, there are nurses down the hall. There are other patients down here. You know what I mean? Like, grab the bus by the shoulders. And I'm like, Betty, we need a miracle. So I start, and I bless her again, right? And I start walking. I'm not kidding. I hear.
You can wait. What do you hear?
The miracle's going to be in you. And I'm like, there's not the answer. It's not the answer we're looking for here.
Oh.
And then I, race upstairs, and the story is great. It's really great stuff. And I was just out of my mind, and but less than an hour later, a counselor, not my counselor, but the other counselor, because my counselor's gone this day, of course, like the day I need him. The day I need the man that I didn't want to be my counselor, he's not there. And this counselor's like, Stacy, we could fight. We could get you 24 more hours up here, and you will lose all of your day treatments because there's only so many dollars in your bucket. Right. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm powerless over the insurance company. All right. I'm powerless over everything. Like, step one.
That is a hard pill to swallow.
Yes. And I don't get to swallow pills anymore.
Ironic that we're talking about treatment and I say pill. But
no, it's true, right? There's no Percocet to make that feel better. Like,
no.
yeah. Yeah. And so, then I get moved down to day treatment. They're literally the unit I was on the second floor. I get moved downstairs, exact same floor plan. I get moved to the opposite end. It was like this weird mind thing that happened. I was like, where am I? Yeah. And I will say, like, there's these things that happen in treatment that become like so important that make no sense outside of the treatment world. And so for me, this was the Christmas tree. I entered on December 11th and came home January 18th. So the Christmas tree is set up. I get down to the day treatment space on like the 21st and I do Christmas in day treatment, right? And I have lovely people who like sent me gifts that I could wrap for the people that were on my unit. It was just lovely. It was so lovely. Like I literally like did wrapping paper and all of us had presents under the tree on Christmas morning, you know, and like, right?
So does that mean that your husband and your kids like sent you gifts that somebody else wrapped on the unit for you?
No, it's friends of mine who were like, how can we help? And I'm like, can you send me, you know, one of them is an artist. I was like, can you send me your like leftover prints that you don't like? And I'll wrap them up. And she's like, I'm not sending you leftovers. I'll send you good ones. And so sent me like actual prints that like she normally gets paid money for, you know, kind of thing. And and then there was another woman who I've never met in person, who lives here in Minneapolis. And we've been connected for several years. And she sent me stickers she does these angel sticker things. She sent me these stickers. And so like I had like a little gift thing for everybody. No, my husband and kids were really very respectful of letting me do my treatment stuff there. My husband did bring me the traditional lasagna on Christmas Day. He called ahead. Very sweet.
Is it? Oh my God, I remember.
Yeah, the lasagna. Yes, Kim, it's that lasagna.
Is this the one made with the filet mignon meatballs?
They're not filet mignon, but they are hand rolled. Yes.
And they're like, you kill the cow the cow that made the beef.
He used to, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, with the little tiny meatballs.
Tiny little meatballs, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, the whole place is just lit up, you know, when they all know what's going on. I'm walking up to lunch on Christmas Day, and the front desk lady's like, Stacy, you have a delivery, and there's like, you know, all this stuff. And the funny part was he had asked me, you know, is there something I can bring up to you? And I was like, sure. And like gave him a list of stuff like cheese, popcorn, and nuts, and you know, like so he still went to the grocery store and got those things. But
okay, good. But he brought me
lasagna. Yeah.
His lasagna.
Yeah. But back to the symbol. This is really great.
Yeah.
So the Christmas tree becomes like the symbol, kind of like reverse of Narnia, how in Narnia it's always winter and never Christmas. Yeah. And for me, it was like, as long as that Christmas tree is up, like I'll stay in recovery.
Oh.
So I had a deal with the housekeeper. And this is the other thing that's kind of amazing in treatment facilities. Like every single person there is there to help you. That is their number one thing, right? So like the housekeeper cleaned my room to make sure that my room was not chaotic so that I could face the chaos in me. You know what I mean? Like this is a purpose. Like she cleans with a purpose. She knows what she's doing, right?
Right.
And the food, my sponsor at the time when I went in, she's not my sponsor anymore because she's in California and I'm in Minnesota. So I have a Minnesota sponsor now, but my California sponsor said, don't complain about anything. You will hate the food unless you say that you love the food. So I loved the food and everyone's complaining about the food. And I'm like, guys, we're like, people are making food for us 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't complain about the food, right? So anyway,
yeah.
So the housekeeper and I had made an agreement that she was going to leave the tree up until I left. And New Year's morning, I got up, it's a Saturday, and I went into the living room and the tree's down. And the overnight tech didn't have like that information and had taken down the tree, and I lost it. And I write on the tech board, I'm like, Stacy's losing her shit. Stacy needs the tree back. Help Stacy. Stacy will help. You know, because I can't actually ask for help for myself. Like I need help. I can say it in third person, right? At that point.
Right.
And
Which
yeah,
is
so we
huge
got
growth for you. Huge
right.
growth,
Oh, to
right?
even be able to say someone needs help and that person is me.
Right.
Like, hey, someone on the floor needs help. Oh, by the way, it's me. Yeah, so we got the tree up, and then the housekeeper gave me this little tree.
Oh.
I don't know if I can. Hang on, I can unhook travel.
Oh yeah. That's a
She's
cute
like, it's kind of a. I decorated it with gnomes for Valentine's Day.
pink
Um,
little pink Valentine's gnomes.
well, because so what happened was to like prove to the overnight tech or whatever that this was fine, he put hearts with all of our names on the tree. It's a big tree, like it's a real tree in a living room, right? And so she turned it into a Valentine tree. And then I almost left without this, and someone ran back there like, you need your heart. Like, yes, I do.
Yeah, I do. I need my heart.
Yeah, yeah. But the morning I was discharged, my day treatment housekeeper, she comes in and she's like, this tree needs a home. I think it needs to go home with you. And I'm like, yes. Like this
So,
way you don't have to relapse. It's like this way you don't have to relapse. I'm like, that sounds
so
like a
is that
great
the
idea.
same tree that got undecorated that you redecorated? Because I was picturing a big Christmas tree. It was just that
No,
little guy.
this is this one. Yeah, I
Okay,
redecorated every. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah,
that's lovely.
I used to have a bigger tree, but it doesn't really function in this office very well. And this one came from Hazelden. Like,
Yeah, that's the
you
tree.
know,
That's
yeah,
the symbolic recovery tree.
it's my recovery tree. Yeah, there it is.
There
Did we
it
hit
is.
all your point? Did we hit all your things?
I think so. I think we did. The systemic issues, the concerns, the right,
Yeah,
the fact that insurance dictates how much care you get,
yeah.
and that
Now
you
that
really felt supported in that place, even though going in you felt like you were not going to be okay.
right. Yeah,
And I think you also, the thing I really heard also is that your recovery is on you. That when you got in
100%.
there, you were thinking it would be other people would be helping you. And what you learned is that the miracle is inside of you and you're the one who has to pull the miracle out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's higher power work that I did that I think plays into that a little bit. But honestly, that like just trusting a process alone is higher power work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like to say, yeah, oh, okay, fine, let me go wherever. And similar things happened, in my outpatient as well, where I'd be like, no, I'm just gonna stay till Christmas, thanks. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not gonna probably happen. So anyway, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for being here. And I thank you so much for sharing. And I thank you so much for being as open and candid about your experiences as you were.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your story and you and how amazing you are. Yeah, so thanks for that.
Thanks for having me.
Whee! Okay. Um, so tune in next week for I don't know what we're doing, but thank you, Stacy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna stop the recording.